very first Icon Elevate for 2024. It's my great pleasure to welcome Sophie Mepham to Icon Elevate. Sophie, wonderful to have you here with us. You are our Executive Manager of Research for the Globe. So you lead our global research aspirations and operations. And I can't wait to dive into that really deeply. Now, you bring to the Icon table more than 20 years of experience in oncology clinical research. And what you've shown over your time with Icon, is 4 years. I think it's almost 4 years.
Yeah.
4 years, very, very soon, is a passion for delivering the best care possible to as many people as possible, as close to home as possible, through new and innovative cancer treatments. You're absolutely committed to expanding oncology and haematology clinical trials across Australia, New Zealand, and Asia. I know we're going to talk about it. Can't wait to hear your journey, Sophie. So I'm going to kick us off. I think everyone would love to know the answer to this question. How did you get started in clinical research? And can you walk us through your career path leading up to the role with Icon?
Yeah, thanks, Mark. Pleasure to be here, and thank you for that great question. My passion for probably started right back in high school. Absolute love of biology. I knew that was something that I wanted to do with the rest of my life. So I studied it at high school, college, university. The biggest factor probably in my decision to take the path that I'm on today was my mum was diagnosed with breast cancer when I was in my second year at university. And that was a tough journey. I needed to leave university a couple of months early and go home, take care of my mum and my younger sisters, and just be there to help. And there were a couple of things that happened to me during that process. My mum actually took part in a clinical trial, one of those really early clinical trials in tamoxifen. And if you consider, she was diagnosed on her 40th birthday, and she's alive and well today, just turned 70. And she was part of that. And I truly believe that my mum taking part in that clinical trial saved her life and is why she is here with us today, alive and well. But I went through that journey with her, and I sat on the other side of the table as you know, as a part of that patient support for my mum. And I was completely blown away by what happened, and had actually no idea about clinical trials before I'd seen that happen. And I said, Mum, alive and well. But also we live in quite a rural part of England, and my mum had a surgery and a chemotherapy and a radiotherapy before clinical trial. And we had to drive her for about 2 hours each way for those 5 weeks of radiotherapy. So that was huge, and I think has really driven my passion for why bringing the best care we can to patients as close to home as possible is so important, because those 4 hours a day were just grueling. And I know what it feels like. And if you consider the size of England and compare that to the size of Australia, you know, patients are having to travel much, much further distances than that. So those were really two very influential things that happened in my life that have led me to where I am today. So I studied for a PhD, wasn't ready to do breast cancer after my mum's experience, went down the leukemia hematology route, loved studying, and had a successful PhD outcome in chronic lymphocytic leukemia. Did some lab work experience. A lot of people don't know I'm actually a fully trained biomedical scientist, so spent 3 years doing all of the pathology testing. I can even cross-match blood if you need it in an emergency. But that was a really great experience for me as well. So worked for about 10 years in the National Health Service, actually probably close to 12 years, part of the National Institute for Health Research and the National Clinical Research Network. And that was an incredible opportunity to build a research portfolio from nothing to, we had about 40 active hematology trials when I left that unit as a research coordinator. And I know that unit is still going strong, and I'm incredibly proud of what they do. So a CRC for about 9 years. I just love that role. Love working with the doctors, love being on the site, working with the patients. But I had a bit of an epiphany as I was coming close to my 40th birthday and decided that we needed to do something a bit exciting. Sent my CV to Peter Mac, and next thing you know, I'm on a plane coming out to Melbourne and got my position there, which was hugely exciting. Whole family moved out, stayed there for a few years, then into the National Research Manager role at Genesis Care for the last 3.5 years, and then joined Icon 4 years ago. So Be
Good.
involved in oncology trials for a very long time.
Great journey. Sophie, I'm just going to digress really quickly. You talked about the UK and the limitations that were there when your mum had treatment. What does it mean to you personally for ICON to go to the UK and replicate what we intend to do, is do exactly the same as what we've done in Australia? What does that mean to you?
That's huge, absolutely huge. Going back and seeing my family last year, and even talking to them now, the wait times in the UK are just horrendous. Patients are still having to travel a lot of distance, a lot of time, and those wait times are just unacceptable. I've got friends and family who it's not unusual to wait 4 or 5 months to start even basic radiotherapy, even sometimes to be seen by a medical oncologist or radiation oncologist. I know people that are waiting months and months, and it's awful. It's when I can see how good care can be delivered, I think ICON will have a profound impact on cancer care in the UK.
Great answer. Now, how has the field of clinical oncology research evolved during your career, and where do you see it heading in the next decade?
I think I've been privileged to be involved in some groundbreaking clinical trials, particularly when I was a study coordinator. So some of the big drugs I was involved in was the rollout of tamoxifen and rituximab, and then later on Herceptin and Keytruda. So all of those drugs now that are just standard of care, I was privileged to be involved in those early trials when they were first coming through. I think for me, the biggest difference, without a doubt, is it's becoming so much more personalised. When my mum went through treatment, breast cancer was breast cancer. If you look at it now, it's about 20 different subtypes, and everybody gets a much more personalised approach to their treatment. I think with the advance in theranostics, with CAR T, CAR B, CAR NK treatment, we're seeing a lot more GMO vaccine-specific studies. It's just become a lot more personalized and a lot more directed to what the patient actually needs based on their tumor type. When I was in the early 2000s, it was more that we'll hit it with a drug that does everything and hope for the best, whereas now we're able to take much more time and have that direct and targeted treatments.
Yeah, wow. Which really leads nicely to my next question. How's technology changing the landscape of clinical research in oncology, and what are the biggest challenges and opportunities in using that technology to improve cancer care globally?
Look, I think there's two sides to that. There's what can we do ourselves with technology, but how is technology more broadly impacting drug development? We're seeing pharmaceutical companies now using AI, machine learning, and deep learning. They're really actually using that to shortening that time span. So instead of a new drug spending years in the lab and then 5 or 10 years in clinical trials, they're actually able to really shorten that time span it takes to develop drugs, but also repurposing old drugs, which I think is really exciting. Thalidomide's a perfect example, went off the radar for years, but now we've repurposed it for myeloma and other treatments. So I think that comes down to AI, deep learning, machine learning is such a huge part. What technology will do for us at an ICON level is, and COVID actually really helped us with that, is the ability to bring clinical trials to patients that don't live in metro regions. So it's telehealth, it's teletrials, it's decentralized clinical trials, and the technology that goes with that. It shouldn't matter whether we live in Toowoomba or Townsville or Brisbane. Patients should have the same equitable access to treatment. And I think that is going to be the biggest game changer for us in across ICON, is having access to that technology.
Yeah, wow. Great stuff. Now, ICON's all about teams. You lead a very dynamic team who are achieving and working towards some pretty ambitious and hopefully incredible outcomes. Tell us a bit about your team.
Look, my team are fabulous. Built a fantastic team over the last few years, and I'm incredibly proud of what they all achieve. They are really dedicated, and the way the team is set up, we've obviously got teams dedicated to governance and study startup to make that process really streamlined. We've got teams dedicated to research coordination, whether that's Australia, New Zealand, whether it's Malaysia, Singapore, obviously looking forward to Europe and the UK. How do we manage our data, our global operations, and how do we manage our IIT programs? I'm incredibly proud of the team, and obviously recently the Icon Cancer Foundation came under research, and we're really incredibly excited to see that develop and grow. In terms of our ambitions, we don't sit quietly in research. Our job, I think, is to bring forward all of the new opportunities. I think we also act as a great barometer for the group. We can see now what's coming through in trials, and obviously in 5 or 10 years that will become standard of care. So we're actually able to say, hey, this is coming. This is the new drug for lung cancer. This is the new way we're going to treat prostate cancer. But for us, it's about growing our IIT capability. So that's how the doctors and healthcare staff build their own clinical trials. We're expanding that and developing relationships with more academic and commercial partners. I think it's about expansion. In the last couple of years alone, we've opened research at Hobart, at Toowoomba and Townsville. Wow. Later this year, we're going to be opening in Mackay and Cairns. We've got plans for Malaysia. And on a call last night with Penny in the UK and our research leadership team, and Penny is very passionate about research going to the UK. So our expansion is a really important part of what we're going to do over the next couple of years. And data, that is a massive change. Data is shaping new drug submissions and helping us and pharma company learn about trends in treatments and diagnosis. And that's an area we've never worked in before. So for us, moving into data is going to be a big step. And I'm hugely excited about theranostics. A big part of theranostics, as you know, the strategy is going to be around research, and having the chance to work with Julie again is very exciting.
Good stuff. Great answer. Now, you're very passionate about what you do, Sophie. So what advice would you give to someone, particularly for girls and young women, about contemplating a career in science or clinical research? What's the advice from Sophie Mepham?
Look, I reflected on this question, Mark. It's a really good question. When I was going through my PhD, there was still, it was incredibly hard to be taken seriously as a scientist back in the mid to late 90s, giving away my age there. There's a very strong belief that research wasn't for women. I even remember my careers advice. Sat with my careers advisor saying I want to do science, and then saying no, girls don't do science. We find you a nice job somewhere else, but the girls don't do science, which fortunately made me much more determined to go and do it. I think it's a much better place for girls in science now. Still don't think we've reached the point where it's equal, but we are so much closer than we were. For me, looking for a career in clinical research, find a good mentor. I do mentor a lot of females in terms of them coming into research, and I get a huge amount of satisfaction from doing that and being able to guide people on that journey. But it's about coming in. We offer a lot of entry-level positions in ICON, clinical research assistants and data positions, and that's how we bring new scientists in. Research is actually quite a female-dominant profession. I think probably about 90% of our staff are female. We are growing that. We've actually got to push the gender balance back the other way, which is unusual, but it's about coming in at the right level. It's about coming in and learning. Certainly after my PhD, I came in as a research assistant for 1.5 years, and it was probably the best part of my learning in my career. I learned so much. So it's about not being afraid to come in and start and learn and work your way up, but also find a good mentor, find someone who's going to hold your hand and take you through that journey as well.
Yeah, great answer. And I think really inspiring for everyone in terms of what can be achieved in a career in science and research. Changing tact a little bit, where do you see ICON making the most significant impact in the future of cancer care? Where's our biggest opportunity to impact?
Gosh, there are so many possible answers to this one, Mark. I had to think about this. I think for me, probably the two key ones, it's about a combination of delivering the best care through giving patients access to not only what we do day to day, but that next level of clinical trials, those other opportunities they may not have. We do that exceptionally well, and we're doing it at more and more of our centres. But it's also about that technology. It's also about utilising the telehealth, teletrials, decentralised clinical trials, so that we can bring all of our treatment options, but for me, particularly clinical trials, to those remote centres. Townsville, Toowoomba, perfect examples of where we've made it happen. And that's where it's going to make a difference. Having sat there with my mum 5 days a week for 5 weeks, driving backwards and forwards for radiotherapy treatment, that's going to have the biggest impact. That's what patients want. They want to access their care closer to home. We can use technology. 7 million patients don't live near a metro city. How do we make sure those patients don't have to do 2 and 3 and 4 and 5 hour drives or flights to get their treatment? They want to be treated close to home.
Absolutely, absolutely. Which leads us nicely then, and I believe this, but what's your view on us, ICON, being uniquely positioned to address some of the challenges in today's healthcare landscape?
Without a doubt, it's our capacity to be innovative. I don't think I've ever worked for somewhere that has such a focus on innovation and doing things differently. The drive to support patients remotely and regionally is huge. I think that positions us exceptionally well. The global network we have of healthcare professionals in ICON is astounding. I was on a call with our research clinical leaders last night in Singapore and the UK and our team here, and it was such a privilege to look at all those faces and see, wow, what an incredible network of doctors we have. And every time we go to a new country, we just engage world leaders, best in class. And I think that really sets us aside. We're not afraid to do things differently. We're already talking about, well, how do we start GMO studies? How do we start doing CAR T-cell studies? And of course, we're going down the theranostics path. We've got that approach to not being afraid to try and let's bring out new ways of treating patients. So I think it's a combination of lots of different things, but they would be the key for me.
Very good. I like this answer very much, Sophie. Now, I think this one is a pretty easy question for you to answer. What keeps you motivated and passionate about your work?
Do you know, Mark, I had a call with my mum just on Sunday night. And every time I talk with her or I see her, when I go back to England, it reminds me that she's here today because of a clinical trial. And every time we offer a patient a clinical trial, we're offering them hope. For me, I don't think there's any other better reason to get out of bed every day. It's hope. That's what we bring every day. We do that across all of ICON, but in research, we're giving that hope that wasn't there with any other option. And I think knowing that, it really drives me in everything that I do every day. I also work, as you've already said, with the most incredible team. Adam and Beck and Tanil and Joanne and Lloyd and Leanne, my direct team, and all of the staff underneath them that report up are just phenomenal. And every day we all get up for the same reason, and we all know that what we do really changes patients' lives. And for me, I still love getting out of bed and coming to work every day.
Good stuff. Great answer. Sophie, last question. Can you share a memorable moment when you felt your work truly made a difference in a patient's life or the broader community?
Yeah, and gosh, so many patients I've had the privilege of being part of their treatment journey, but there's always one that stands out. I was working as a research coordinator back in the NHS, and there was a young male patient. His name was Jamie. He was 19 years old. He came in through the emergency department unconscious and critically unwell. By the time they'd scanned him, and he was sent up to ICU, and he actually had diffuse large B-cell lymphoma, and he had a tumor that was wrapped around his heart and his aorta. And it was probably one of the worst cases that the MDT team had ever seen. And his chances were just almost zero at coming out of it. He had no family. He was completely on his own. And we put him onto a clinical trial. It was actually for rituximab back then. So very early days, rituximab was just coming out. And when I first went in to see him, he was literally barely conscious. And it was really sad because there was no one there with him, and his chances were so small that he would come out of this. He went onto the clinical trial, and I'll never forget, about 2 weeks later, just going back to see how he was doing. And he was sitting up in bed, eating his breakfast, drinking a cup of tea, like nothing had happened. And when we went back and reviewed his scans at the MDT meeting, the tumor had literally melted away. I'll never forget the doctors just all of us just incredulous. We had to keep double checking that we were actually looking at the right scan. And that's what clinical trials is about. That's when you know you've had an impact and you've changed a life. And it still gives me goosebumps when I remember him. In fact, we're still in touch. He still messages me, and he is gone on to live. He's got a family now. He lives a fantastic life. And that's a kind of patient I'll never forget, because I was directly involved. If we didn't have a trials program, he probably wouldn't be here today.
Yeah.
And it's huge. And now you think rituximab is so frequently given, but seeing it early on when it was just coming out was incredible to be part of that.
What an incredible story, Sophie. If that doesn't inspire all of the people who are watching this to understand why we all do what we do, I don't know what does. Incredible story. Sophie, thank you so much for joining us on Icon Elevate. You've had an amazing career thus far. I know you're going to continue to strive for even more excellence in the years to come with Icon. Thank you for also being an inspiration to all people who want to pursue a career in science and clinical research. So Sophie Mepham, thank you for joining us on Icon Elevate.
Thank you very much, Mark.